Okay, well, we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. As many of you know, my name is Prue Klein, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator here at Wine Communicators of Australia. Today's webinar will be presented by a panel of experts from the team at Shopify. Shopify specialises in e-commerce platforms for online stores and retail point-of-sale systems. Please join me in welcoming the team, the panel for today. Ash Virgo, Julia Bucalina, and Mal Chia. And I know that Ash, you're going to introduce the team in a little bit more detail shortly, so I'll leave it at that. Together, they'll be delving into the key topics that will elevate your wine brand, drive growth, and leveraging the cutting-edge ecosystem of Shopify. So lots to listen and learn. We've allowed plenty of time for questions to be asked. Today, they can be asked throughout the presentation. Ash and I will be keeping a close eye on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So please type any questions you have in there. And as usual, this webinar will be recorded and a copy of the recording will be sent to all registered attendees should you wish to watch the content again. It is now my pleasure to hand over to Ash and the team for today's presentation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Prue. Hello, everyone. And yeah, as Prue said, welcome so much to our webinar today in collaboration with one of our awesome agency partners, Ecomm Nation. We're very excited to have you join us as we delve into the key topics that will elevate your wine brand and drive growth in the ever-evolving digital landscape whilst leveraging the ecosystem of Shopify. Now, today we've decided to shake things up a little bit, and instead of just another presentation, we wanted to bring you a panel conversation between an agency and then a Shopify expert as well to provide a comprehensive and well-rounded perspective on selling wine online. So Mal from Ecomm Nation will bring expertise in e-commerce growth strategies, in digital marketing, in industry insights, while the lovely Julia from Shopify, my team, brings in-depth knowledge from the platform features, capabilities, and best practices specific to the wine industry. So as Prue said, grab your pen, grab your paper. We're going to keep it really technical and tactical so you can write down different insights and tips and tricks and really actionable advice. And feel free to ask questions in the Q&A box as we go along. Both Mal and Julia then I can kind of feed the questions throughout just in case we want to really answer them in situ. So without further ado, I would love to properly introduce you to your panelists, Mal and Julia. Mal, I'm going to hand over to you first, and you can give yourself a quick intro because you'll do it much better than me.
Thanks, Ash. My name's Mal. I'm the managing director at Ecomm Nation. Ecomm Nation is a boutique e-commerce marketing agency. Pardon me. So essentially, we handle the three key pillars as we see it of e-commerce, which is around your performance media, your email marketing and loyalty, and then also your Shopify development. We are a specialist Shopify development agency as well. So we, in a nutshell, help brands grow profitably and sustainably. We were founded by retailers for retailers with really deep industry knowledge of the e-commerce space. So our job is to really work with the founders and our clients to be able to build really awesome, amazing businesses, not just run ads or build websites, but to actually build really, really powerful businesses. So we've worked with some really amazing brands, had the pleasure of working with Shopify on a number of wine clients, actually. So you're really pleased to be here today.
Thanks, Mal. And Julia, one of my colleagues, can you tell us a little bit your journey at Shopify?
Sure can. Thanks, Ash. So I joined Shopify nearly 2 years ago as a senior merchant success manager, and that was after spending 10 years leading different retail e-commerce businesses here and in the UK. And the reason that I moved over to Shopify was I just really enjoyed helping businesses grow, and I really believe that all businesses should be online today, and that shouldn't be distracting them from their art and what they create. And that's where I come in my role. I work with some of our largest merchants across APAC, and I focus on strategy and enablement, making sure they're growing and utilizing everything that Shopify has to offer.
Awesome. Thank you. So before we jump into things, I just kind of wanted to level set who we Shopify are. So Shopify is, in case you don't know, and that's so fine, is a global e-commerce platform, and we power over about 25% of all online commerce in Australia. So just to kind of give you that number on scale, our retailers process more than 650 billion in sales globally since Shopify's inception. And we've reached about 560 million shoppers last year alone. So to kind of put it another way, about 30% of all online shopping happened through Shopify globally last year. One thing I will note is that, and I'm sure a lot of you are kind of thinking this, is Shopify is not a built for wine platform. We launched last year Shopify for Wine, and that was very much a marketing and kind of play for the wine industry. But we are not a built for wine platform, and we don't ever want to be. We have significant scale across all industries, inclusive of lots of wine businesses. But thanks to our ecosystem of app partners, it allows us to do everything that a built for wine platform can do, from building subscriptions to loyalty programs, inventory management, etc. But you will learn much more about that today. So first up, in terms of the secrets to selling wine online, crafting a captivating wine brand. Mal, I'm going to open the first question up to you. What are some of the key elements that wine brands should consider when crafting their brand identity to stand out in the wine industry online?
Great question, Nash. Branding, as everyone on the call will know, is so important when it comes to wine. When you're talking about, a shelf at a retail physical retail store, it's the thing which stands out. There's so many studies which show that a lot of consumers make their purchase decision based on the brand, the label. But more than just the actual brand itself, that design element is really thinking about what's the story of your winery, of your brand, and really understanding how is that actually going to resonate? How's that going to get cut through in the market? So a lot of it is based on an emotional decision about, why do I care? What is it about your brand, about my brand, which is going to make someone care, which is going to choose my brand versus another one? There's actually a winery I'm working with at the moment who's currently going through a process of figuring out what's the thing about them which is going to stand out. They're brand new to market. They haven't even launched yet, but part of it is figuring out that positioning. And for them, their positioning is really about the fact that they do it the old way. They do it in very old school, rustic ways. So that becomes part of their identity and part of their story, which we're really leaning into, as far as working with them to really unpack that and then make sure that's reflected through everything which they do. Then in addition to that, you need to have great product, as well, to actually have something which you can actually hold up and say, this is what we're famous for. So from a brand point of view, the way I like to look at brands is that outside of that core essence about what it is which you do, is to really think about your brand in 5 different ways, which is what's your brand as a person. When someone thinks about your brand, who can they picture? What's the sort of person they can picture behind this? You've got this great example here, Ash, of 19 crimes. It's like, criminals from the 1900s. I'm looking at that and instantly that's the vibe I'm getting from that. Alpha Box and Dice also do it really well as well. That's the other example you have here. And they're a winery which we know quite well. They've got a really clear aesthetic. They've got a really clear identity in terms of who they are. Hugh Hamilton, which is a winery which I'm a big fan of, and I've been a member of them for a long time. They talk about being part of the black sheep, about Hugh being the identity behind that. So you can picture that. Then it's about thinking about your brand as a product. What's the product people think of? Is it a particular varietal which you become famous for? Is it your bottle shape? Is it something like that which people identify with? Then it's about thinking about the brand as as an organization. When they think about you and how you operate, what do they think about when they think about you in that regard? And then there's a fourth one which I've completely forgotten and slipped my mind. I've been thinking about it all day and now it's gone.
That's okay. You can just pop back in when you remember.
I will.
No, I love that. And I think connected to that, Julia, so 73% of consumers are more likely to purchase if they feel a strong emotional connection to the brand, much like what you're saying there on those pillars, Mal. With relation to Shopify, what specific features or tools do we offer to help wine brands or brands in general educate their customers about their products and therefore create that strong emotional connection with their brand online?
There's a lot. There honestly is a lot you can utilize. And I think Mal put it really well when he spoke about it's step one is kind of identifying who you are and what you want to say. And then Shopify has the tools for you to be able to showcase that. So you can take it down really simply of we have these beautiful creative themes that are all built to be the best in class conversion. And all you actually need to do is populate your brand within that. And you get all of this commerce education behind it. And then you can do things like utilize Shopify Inbox, and that's around creating engagement campaigns. And when someone signs up or views your site, and just simply creating these automatic ways that you can engage your customer. We also have the Shop app, which I'm sure anybody who's purchased ShopPay has seen, and I think it's one of our superpowers. And you're able to create these like mini experiences within the Shop app that is an exceptionally highly interactive and engaged forum for you to engage with customers, new and existing customers as well, which I think is super powerful. And also on the Shopify side, we've had huge advancements in AI on the Shopify platform, and that's really about helping you leverage what you're already doing. So with content creation, you've got base information, but how do you expand and extend that? How do you make sure it's SEO friendly? How do you help with your marketing like subject lines, and go deeper and wider than ever before? And the little things like search and discover app, which is really good. And that's just around making sure the customers who are visiting your site are able to discover your products on site based on their own behaviors, which I think is super cool. It's a very small bite size of what's there, but just kind of hopefully get you guys thinking.
AI, we're going to tap into that later. There is so much cool stuff that's like the buzzword of the moment. Now, I think it'd be a little bit remiss of us not to focus in on marketing when talking about a wine brand. And we know that the top performing businesses know how to leverage their strengths through marketing in this space. Are there any specific marketing strategies or channels that wine brands should really focus on to reach their target audience and continue to kind of leverage that brand they're building?
Like with any business, but particularly for wine, your most powerful marketing asset is your email list. Is that first party data which you're collecting. So as a digital marketer and digital marketing, as an industry, we've sort of made a rod for our own back by saying that everything is, that you can attribute everything to the dollar which someone's spending. But the problem is with wine in particular, people don't tend to buy on that very first interaction. Just because you put an ad in front of someone doesn't mean that they're going to be ready to buy your wine right then and there. They might be intrigued. It's about how do you actually then get them to stick around for a little while, discover more about it, and then get them to that purchase. Most times when someone is going to a wine site, it's because they've heard about you previously. You've been recommended. They've previously had you at a restaurant or something like that, and then they're going to the website to find out more. Even then, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going to purchase from you straight away. So one big thing which I would highly recommend is making sure that you are optimizing your website, through using pop-ups, through using apps like Klaviyo or things like that, to be able to encourage people to sign up by giving them an incentive to sign up. And I'm not just talking a discount, but giving them a reason, like by doing this, they get access to XYZ. There are some wineries which do that incredibly well. Hugh Hamilton, like I mentioned before, Torbeck as well, also do it really well. That if you are one of their subscribers, you do get access to particular vintages, which they only release through the email list. So that's a little bit of a hook which you can put in there to give someone a reason to sign up for the email. But in order to then get traffic to the site, though, that's where things like your social media, your ads, and things like that come into it. But just don't expect that to drive an immediate return. Look at those channels more for brand building, brand awareness, brand interest, to get people to the site to explore, to then ultimately sign up for something, so that when they're ready to buy, you can follow up with an email at that point. You can keep them nurtured throughout the journey, telling them about your new releases, the new vintage, stories from like the winemaker and things like that. Again, some great examples of that. Hugh Hamilton do that incredibly well with their emails. Alpha Box and Dice both do that incredibly well. Now, if I sound like I talk about South Australian wines a lot, that's because I am South Australian, so I have a natural bias for South Australian wines. But there's a lot of wineries who are doing that incredibly well. But they really focus on telling that story, telling that narrative, and being frequent with but not too frequent with emails, making sure they're consistently following up all the whole time after someone signs up, making sure they're onboarding them to the story about the winery, and then making sure there's at least a monthly newsletter, just letting them know what's going on about new releases, with how the vintage is looking, celebrating events, or, if there's any wine tastings going on around the country, just keeping people engaged in the story that way.
Yeah, it's humanizing the brand, isn't it? a really key feature. I've received one before where I've got a little video of my wine being packed, and then it's sent off to me and letting me know that it's in the mail and on the way. And I thought that was really cool to actually see the person packing my wine. Okay, so moving on, now that we've built our brand online, the next piece is elevating that customer experience as well, right? So Julia, I'm going to throw this first question to you. Shopify just did an awesome study, and we released the Australian Retail Report, which offers retailers a deep dive into shifting consumer behaviours and evolving pathways to growth. We found that customer experience and customer-related strategies were the #1 priority for Australian retailers in both the short and long term. Why do you think this is? It's a big question. Apologies.
It is a big question, but to be honest, I wasn't surprised by it. And if you think about it, for the last kind of 10 years, I suppose, since I've really been in the industry, there was kind of low online competition. Each vertical had only a handful of strong competition sitting there. And then throughout COVID, there was incredibly high demand, and businesses really got away with not necessarily providing the best experience. It was just about getting product into that customer's hands. And now there's all these new industries that are entering online. There's a lot more competition. The wine industry is one of them, right? Buying online pre-COVID was not really done, and now it's becoming much more common. And we have seen people entering in exceptionally interesting ways. With that, there's a whole bunch of new customers online, and customers have increased their expectations. And this comes, it's come to the point where they're demanding more than product. They want to feel good about their purchase. They want the same level of engagement they get in store. And we actually said the clue of why it's so important earlier, but 73% of consumers are more likely to make a purchase if they feel a strong emotional connection with the brand. That's why it's so important. If you think you can do that to your consumer, they're going to buy. So as a business, you should be focusing on it. Yeah, I think it's pretty much that demand result.
So Julia, I just noticed that you've said 73%. It's the exact flip of that number, which says to me that not enough retail leaders think it's critical.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, oh my God, the math works out.
Which means there's the opportunity there, right? If you as a business do it, you're going to be ahead of a whole bunch of other businesses that aren't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. And so Mal, kind of like doubling down on that with relation to what you're seeing in the industry, what are some of the specific challenges that wine brands face when it comes to creating a seamless customer journey or experience, and how can they overcome these? Like, I know, for example, when you think about customer experience, everyone goes to like shipping and logistic nightmares.
Yep. So the theory is called the peak end rule. If you haven't heard this before, I'm going to just run you through it now. So what it is that customers remember the peak and the end of a transaction. So they remember the peak, which is like the moment where their emotions are the most heightened, and they remember the very end of it. So from a retail perspective, those two things, from an e-commerce perspective, those two things are: the peak is the moment before someone actually hits the buy button, and then the end is when they actually receive it, the whole fulfillment process. So it's a very long end when it comes to e-commerce. So when it comes to a wine setting, one of the biggest challenges is it's not a cheap purchase. It's not like, something which is a single bottle of like $20 or $25. You typically bought like, a pack of 6, bought a 6-pack, $150, and then you've got to consider about, okay, what's the condition when it arrives? If I live in an apartment, where's it going to be left? Do I need to then go to the post office or a collection depot or something like that to pick it up? So there's a lot of considerations with that, which are potential barriers to someone buying. What I work with a lot of our clients at Ecomm Nation with is to understanding how can we actually reduce those friction at those different points? How do we make sure that we are building trust through every interaction so that customers know that when they purchase, it's going to be delivered safely, it's going to be delivered quickly, it's going to be delivered safely, it's going to be delivered to their specifications in terms of where it's going to be delivered to. But then also with wine, there's other things around like, weather as well, which plays a big factor in it. During summer, sometimes you need to hold orders. I was talking with a fairly large winery, which does, several $1 million in revenue, a month in terms of their D2C. And they were saying like, they would have to hold orders, but they wouldn't notify customers when they would need to hold the delivery, the fulfillment of it. But those are sort of things where as soon as people don't have that great customer experience because they order something, the expectation now is that it's going to be fulfilled within 24 hours, which means that it's exited the warehouse in 24 hours. If it's any longer than that, it starts to creep into customers' minds about, well, why hasn't that arrived? So from a wine perspective, it's really important to set those expectations early in terms of like when something's shipped, following up straight away with an email, explaining to them what your shipping rules are in terms of like, we won't ship during certain days. We will only do this. It's only going to get picked up from the winery on these certain days. But managing those expectations early on and then following up through that whole process after something ships is really important. So you're not only notifying them after they've ordered, but you're also telling them, okay, this is what to expect. This is when to expect it as well. And then through that delivery process as well, using third parties like ShipIt or Wonderment or things like that to be able to plug into Shopify to actually explain to people, this is the process, this is where it's at, it's out for delivery, it's scheduled for delivery today, it's out for delivery, this is how to track your order, it's going to arrive within certain times. Those things help to build trust. And more importantly, from a wine perspective, a repurchase as well, because people trust that experience. So that means they're more likely, when they finish that 6-pack, which in terms of me, that'll take about a week or two, they'll come back and buy again. Right. But also with subscription as well, when people know they're going to have a really pleasurable subscription experience, they're likely to stay on. So I'm a member of a number of wine clubs, Hugh Hamilton, like I mentioned before, but probably my favorite one is Good Pair Days. So Good Pair Days, they're a multi, they retail a number of different wines. They're an online only subscription model. But in terms of their communications, they do it incredibly well. What I probably encourage everyone to do here is to look at what they're doing. And if you're on Shopify, there's so many apps out there which can replicate that experience, in terms of ensuring that customers do get that great communication and are communicated all the way through from the moment they purchase right up until they receive the wine and even beyond that as well.
No, I love that. It's almost that over communicating piece, but it has a fine line. Now, related to that, Beth has actually asked a question, and that is, what is the ideal frequency for EDMs based on your experience within the wine industry? Now, I assume that's not with reference to things like letting them know when the ship has sent out, but do you have a rough guide on that?
At a minimum, once a month. At a minimum once a month. Depending, I would segment your list in terms of like who are the people who want to hear from you a lot versus the people who are more casual. So look at their buying behavior, look at their the email open rates as well, and then segment your list out. Because if you do have hardcore followers, cater to them. I would really lean into those guys because they're the guys who are going to be raving about the wine. They're going to be referring the wine. I mentioned Torbeck before. I'm a Torbeck customer. Torbeck, the new run rig release came out at the start of the year. I was like ready. I was hyped up. I was telling people because I'm on the wine club, I've got a special allocation of that. So I can communicate that. And I'm telling everyone about it, going, oh my God, you got to come over. I've got the new run rig coming, da, 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 da. So you can really lean into those people who are, who are your fans, who are your hardcore fans. Yeah. And then the more casual customers, that's fine. Put them on a different cadence. And if they then move into become hardcore through their buying behavior or their open rate behavior or things like that, then you can automatically, using tools like Klaviyo, move them into those brackets. In the same way as well, like also if you're using Shopify, making sure you're tagging those customers, in Shopify as well, is also really powerful. That way you can just pass that data straight into Klaviyo or whatever platform you're using, just based on their behavior in Shopify.
I love that. And so, yeah, I guess I'm kind of going to mesh these couple of questions together. But yeah, so Mal, you're talking about how you can personalize the customer experience on the website, right? So you take into factors like customer preferences, previous purchases, recommendations to make it a really memorable experience for them online. Julia, how can we kind of then take that from the online experience to the cellar door experience and really create that omni-channel kind of consumer from taking that profile online to offline?
The easiest way to do that is to make sure that your technology is aligned. And I think it's that kind of, if you think of building a house, you've got to make sure you've got the foundations there to make it look beautiful. And having a single view of your customer is kind of invaluable, I would say, especially as like I'm an ex-retailer, and that was something that I pursued for a very long time at every business I worked in. And what you want to do is you want to be able to see that customer, whether they're at your cellar door, whether they're eating at your restaurant, whether they're online, whether they're chatting to your customer service team, whatever it is, you want to know who they are, how they've interacted with you before, and how whoever is talking to them can level up that experience instantly. And sometimes that's just being like, hey, Ash, I know who you are. And I know that you love Chardonnay more than anything in the world because it's all you order. It's those tiny little things that make such a big difference. And by having the aligned technology, and I would totally be remiss not to mention Shopify POS here, because that does a lot of this automatically for you. You build out unique experiences for customers wherever they are, whenever you see them, it's there. And it means that cellar door, through your wine club, browsing online, you've got that. I actually had a merchant, and I think this is important when you think of the wine industry. Look outside the wine industry as well at what they're doing, because sometimes it can just spark the inspiration of looking at things differently. And I think we've learnt that over the last few years, how important that is. But I had one of my retailers test Shopify POS in one of their new stores just to see if it was going to do everything I was telling them it was going to do. They do over 100 million in their retail doors. They did one store 4 months. They called me a few weeks ago and said, how quickly can we roll this out to the rest of our stores? And I was like, oh, okay, that was fast. What happened? Why was it so impactful? How did this happen? And they said the in-store activation of being able to connect an in-store customer where they have these exceptional experiences, and then being able to directly influence the delivery of that order of, no, you can get all these things, we'll just ship them to your house. You don't have to take them on the rest of your trip with you. Or I know what you did in store, let me reward you with that awesome experience later. They said not only did it increase the AOV in the store, but it increased the lifetime value of those customers so dramatically, it's pretty much funded the POS project for the rest of their stores. So, and that was like, I was shocked by that, and I believe in the product dramatically. So technology definitely underpins it the most, and getting that connection is going to allow you to do what you already do amazingly well.
So, Julie, if I can just cut in there, you actually said something really interesting there about, look outside the industry. I got to say, that's actually one of the things which I've actually noticed a lot with working with a lot of different wineries, is that there is this belief that you need to have something which is really bespoke for the industry. And I'm not just saying this because we do a lot of the migrations, but when you actually dig into the requirements of that, you realize quickly that those requirements don't need to be specific to that. Yes, sure, like some of it is customized, but it's asking the question about why do we actually need to do it that way? And the benefit of Shopify is that it is open to everyone. Like literally any merchant can go on board and use Shopify. And so I found a lot of value with the fact that, there is an app for everything. So the Shopify app marketplace, is an absolute goldmine of just being able to find what's that thing you're looking to do, and being able to just go into the app, the app store, and be able to find it really, really quickly. And there are so many great options for subscriptions. And they all have their different, pros and cons, but being able to find one which fits your need, but more importantly, will continue to develop over time as well, versus something which is only built for a specific purpose, which sometimes doesn't get the level of investment and development which an app on the Shopify marketplace, which is servicing, hundreds of different verticals, does.
100%. I might be opening a can of worms with this, but a really good example is like B2B. And if you think B2B pre-COVID was mostly person to person. And since COVID, it had to dramatically evolutionize into an online space, and Shopify created a B2B product. So many people I've spoken to are like, oh no, we do it like this, then look into the product and then go, oh, actually that kind of does what we need it to do. Okay, fine, we'll change it, because we took the learnings of commerce in general, removing the need for what a wholesale customer needed, and just looked at what do people need to transact online, and then applied that to what do you need if you're a business, like what information do you need if you're a business. And I found that just like super amazing. But yeah, I've worked in so many different verticals like beauty, fashion, furniture, electronics, and every single one of them boils down to how do we do what we do wonderfully and get it to our customers. And the technology in the middle should be an enabler, not kind of the reason, you know, it's kind of, it should just enable you to do what you already do really well.
I love that. That's a really good sentiment. So kind of building on that now, we're going to fly into data-driven decisions for wine success. So obviously we have so much data at our fingertips when it comes to the online store. So reflecting back on that Australian retail report, and I do kind of reference it a bit because I think some of the attributes and the information that we've been able to pull from it are amazing. Some of the top attributes of the top fastest growing retail brands in Australia use a data-informed brand strategy. Let's just level set. What does that actually even mean, Julia? Can you give us a bit of a rundown?
Everybody should be using data. Let's just level set. Nobody should making a decision without having a look into some historical data, because as we know all in history, the past does inform the future. Data is very important in terms of influencing where you need to invest. And those retail brands in particular, they'll be tracking all their top of funnel metrics of like, how are we acquiring customers? Where are they? What do they look like? Why are they coming to us? And then they'll be growing on those and then optimizing all the bottom of the funnel conversion of how do we keep them? And you should also make sure, like, think of it like a bucket or a funnel. Everyone calls it something different, but you want to make sure there's no holes in that bucket. And it's important to have the balance between acquisition and retention of, you need to be making sure that you're always acquiring new customers, but that you're also retaining them. I used to give my customer service team a budget. I would tell them how much my CPA was, how much my cost per acquisition was, and say, you can spend that on a customer. You don't have to ask me, just spend it, because or else I've got to spend that again to acquire another customer. When you think about brand strategy, it's all about looking at where you're sitting. What do you need to do? Is it about customers? Is it about conversion? And then that's where you need to be putting your money.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
No, that absolutely does. And so Mal, you're going to build on that for me now. And I'm actually going to ask a question as well that Joel's also flown through. So data suggests that about 82% of consumers expect personalized recommendations when shopping online. And I think we can probably all attest to that. Now, how can we leverage wine clubs to provide personalized recommendations and enhance that customer experience online? And Joel's question here is, just to add to that, do we have some preferred subscription apps on Shopify for the wine industry?
Cool. So wine clubs for any winery should be a core part of your D2C strategy. For a couple of reasons. One is because it's a common pattern which people expect to see. If you like something, then getting them onto a subscription, it should be pretty easy to be able to do, particularly if you offer different frequency, like monthly, quarterly, biannually, things like that. But from a strategic standpoint, what you're looking to do with a wine club is to increase your lifetime value, your LTV. One thing which I always look at with any client, and going back to the data-informed brand strategy, is understanding what is the lifetime value of your customers. Do they just come in for one purchase, or are they going to come again, for multiple purchases? So wine clubs are a great way to enable that, to be able to drive greater lifetime value, particularly if you're starting to see that behavior already, that people are coming back for one or two purchases. Pushing them into a wine club makes total sense for that. So looking into how you can then leverage that data is that once you have that data, you can look at what people are choosing, what they're rating with the wine, what they're rating in terms of the orders, like how they're rating each bottle they're receiving, to then feed that data back into Shopify and to Klaviyo and everything else to actually understand more about what their preferences are. What types of wine do they prefer? What do they not like? Are they reds, whites? Do they prefer it dry, sweeter? Because once you can understand that, you can then start using that data to then inform other parts of your business in terms of your new product development, in terms of how are you your new product development, but also in terms of how are you then looking at evolving these wines with the next release, things like that. But also being able to cater to them with different offers as well, by being able to be more targeted. Because if you understand that someone likes more premium wines at a higher price point, you can then put together special offers to then further increase that lifetime value as well. You can give them further upsells, or things like that, to be able to get them to continue to engage with you, to continue to provide them greater value because it's personalized to them. Again, going back, talking to my story, my experience with wine clubs, because I've been a member of many of them, is that the best ones are the ones which understand what I like. They don't keep giving me the same thing over and over again. So ensuring that you are sending a review afterwards, getting your customers to review the bottles which they've just received, and then being able to feed that back in to then inform it and continue to evolve and almost personalize what they're getting if you have a wide range. However, with a lot of wineries, particularly the smaller ones, you don't really have that luxury. It is kind of the box is the box, or there's maybe a red box and a white box or things like that. So there's less scope to use that data, but you can still use that to kind of inform you to be able to then to be able to feed that data back into your product strategy in terms of how you then looking at evolving your products, like I talked about before. So, in personalization is a big part of it, because at the end of the day, you stay in something because you feel that it's for you. Even when I was talking about earlier on about brands, the reason why you choose to shop certain brands, why you pick a certain winery, why you even grab that bottle off the shelf, is because that label, that brand has spoken to you, because you feel it's something which really aligns with how you feel. In the same way, a wine club is the same. You are going to continue to be a member of wine clubs, which do feel like they're for you. So even if you don't have, you can't offer lots of different wines and different combinations and things like that, personalizing the messaging, inviting people to certain events, or keeping them more informed about the wines which they're interested in, can help to deepen that connection there, which is what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, awesome. And so with relation to those subscription apps.
Yes, subscription apps. Yeah, there's quite a lot out there. Sorry, I forgot to answer that part of the question. Look, two which we use quite a lot is Bold and Recharge. So they're probably the two most common ones which we use. And part of it is that you want to think about what's your use case. Like, how do you actually want to structure your wine club, first of all, in terms of like, what's the different tiers? Do you have existing wine club members you're trying to bring over and you need to be able to grandfather plans in and things like that? There's a lot of different requirements you do need to think about. But once you figure out what those requirements are, how you expect people to be able to transact, in the different wine clubs, whether that then goes on to lead to personalized pricing on the website, things like that. Then it's a matter of finding that right app, to be able to do that. And like I mentioned before, Shopify has an app for everything. Like literally, you can think about the most esoteric thing possible, and you'll probably find an app for that. You'll probably find 100 apps for that. But the two go-to apps, which I commonly see when it comes to wine clubs, is Recharge and Bold.
We've also seen a few as well with Retection, who I now believe is Stay AI. I've just seen your question, Richard, around Loop subscriptions. We've definitely seen a few on there. I don't know if you've had much experience with Loop, Mal.
Not really. I have seen it before, but we haven't really used it.
Yeah, we're the same. I probably haven't seen a bunch that use it for a wine club. And then there is also a new app coming to market called Wine Hub, which isn't currently in the Shopify store, but I know is creating a little bit of a buzz in the market as well. So hopefully we'll start to see them roll out. Sue, I'll also answer your question just in situ. Does Shopify integrate with NetSuite? We sure do. We have lots of integrate. They're one of our big ERP partners, so most definitely. Now, I know you already touched on the point of sale side of things, Julia, but I just kind of wanted you to lean into a little bit about the data that you can pull from point of sale and how that can be used to drive more sales and enhance customer satisfaction as well. Can you maybe give us a little bit more insight on what the actual point of sale pulls, especially from like a wine club perspective as well?
Okay, if I was going to talk about POS data in particular, I think it's around the connection again. So if you think about it, aligning the technology, it's for this. So you can see it all within POS. Using POS, pulling in things like your wine club subscription. So you can have your subscription app on your POS. When you put in the customer, you can see exactly what they're subscribed to. And then you could use things like Klaviyo for your segmentation and profiling. So then you can see what group do they fall into, because you can also have Klaviyo on your POS, and what is their profile, maybe like what's their intention as well. Then you set up Yotpo for loyalty. So then you see what level they are and whether they're owed some special loyalty or whether the person there thinks that it's important to provide some at that stage. And this is all for online and offline. So it really creates that like ecosystem of a customer, or of instead of it being, I'm an online customer, I'm an offline customer, it's, I'm just this brand's customer and they know me and how I like to purchase. I am personally someone who loves going to a cellar door, but I can't travel all the time and I live in Sydney. So how do I get that same experience offline? And a lot of the time it's engaging through email, through social, but also when I do that, I can feel the personalized experiences that ripple creates. And then when I do get to go back into the cellar door, having that kind of, they know who I am, and it's not reliant on David, the owner who's known me for too long, that I would like to admit remembering who I am. If you know what I mean, it's kind of the brand knows me and that's good enough. So a really kind of cool thing to think about is like a customer comes to your cellar door, they have a reservation, they do a tasting. The person doing that tasting should already know that that person's on the wine club and they can see what they had last time. They should be engaging on that and using that as like a, hey, what did you think of the new Pinot? What did you think of the vintage we just sent you? How did you like that? And then, do you want to try something different? Or I think you should try that based on what you've said. And then post engagement, you have, and this is all based on data, right? This is all the information that you just, there's no guesswork here. It's exposed to you. But then using that information to create a post engagement after they've left. So they feel great. They've just had a delicious meal and delicious wine and they've gone home. How do you continue that feeling and that kind of brand awareness? And that's through sending something to their house, to just engaging them on like, hey, this is what you tasted today if you forgot. You know, how many times do you leave a winery and you're like, was it the Riesling or was it this? Imagine being able to send a tailored email to them and saying, hey, here's what you tasted today. Do you want to pick any up? Do you want to add any to your next order? The options are really endless. The data that you have available is endless. And the things that you can connect into it, Mal's talked about the App Store a lot, but the apps available on POS just takes it to that next level, because then it can be about visits, in-store, offline, and online. And it's just, yeah, very powerful to create those personalized experiences that are so important and rich.
I think one of my favorite POS features is the cadence that you can send, or the abandoned cart. So basically when I'm in store, I've tried all these wines, I'm overwhelmed. If you send me an email with everything that I've tried, I'm probably going to buy them when I get home because of convenience. And you've sent me an email and you've given me 10% off as a kind of a loyalty kickback as well with a refer a friends. Like the conversion rate on that is going to be so much higher because you can just share that data really easily from the cellar door to online.
Exactly.
I was just thinking in terms of like a degustation. You go to degustation, every course there's a new wine. I don't remember what I drank the first second. I remember that I liked it, but if I got an email telling me that, hey, these, like, thanks for coming to degustation, here's the 11 wines you drank, get 10% off if you buy it now from this email, I'm probably buying half of those.
Yeah, most definitely. I can see a question come through. I'm going to answer that in a little bit because we link back to it, but just quickly, Mal, any specific metrics or key performance indicators, those KPIs that wine brands should prioritize when analyzing their data to ensure that, their marketing and sales efforts are actually successful?
Yeah. Lifetime value is a big one. So I mentioned that before, knowing your customers, and after you acquire them for the very first purchase, looking at their 30, 60, 90 day, then 180 and 360 day repurchase rate, to look at, like, are they actually coming back and buying from us again is a really big one, to ensure that they first of all had a great experience, and then making sure you can then get them back in for another great experience. Also looking at your cost per acquisition as well. So how much are you actually paying to acquire that customer in the first place? That's your customer acquisition cost. So which is effectively, your marketing spend divided by the number of new customers within a certain period. That gives you an idea about how much are we paying to acquire a new customer, and you can balance that out with what's the lifetime value. So what's the payback period? How long before that customer is profitable? Because if you find that you're getting a lot of customers into your wine club and suddenly, they spend $1,000 with you in a year, sometimes paying $100 for them might actually be okay. It might actually make you profitable in the long run. But you need to understand both those metrics. The other one I probably look at as well is looking at your marketing efficiency ratio, which is your MER. That is your marketing spend, your advertising spend as a percentage of your total revenue, and ensuring that that fits within your profitability targets as well. Yeah. So first of all, with any financial modeling you do, not just understanding what revenue we're trying to hit, but also what are all those other costs along the way? What are those operational costs? What are those marketing costs? What's our gross margin on the product? So that from a marketing sense, you know how much you can actually afford to spend to acquire a new customer, because you also know how much the customer is going to be worth to you over the next 12 months.
I love that. Spencer just asked a question as well with regards to what are some of the POS systems Shopify recommends and integrates well with. Number one, we would say Shopify has its own POS. So I don't know if we've made that actually clear, but Shopify POS, I would say, is the number one, because that actually allows you to have that complete omni-channel experience from in-store to online. There are others, there's from the likes of Vend, Retail Express, Lightspeed is probably a big one in this space. But they won't have the same kind of all these omni-channel features that we're speaking about. Definitely things true with Shopify POS. But again, it's one of those things, and it always comes back to kind of sitting down and going, what's best for your business? If you have a restaurant, that won't work with Shopify POS. So you'll need another, to Richard's point here, how about a winery with a restaurant? Yep, definitely. You can either have Shopify POS to power the seller door, and then you might have Lightspeed, another integration there, so that you can work through and still service your restaurant. So there's lots of different workarounds, and that's again just having a conversation with someone like a Mal or an agency who'll help you kind of troubleshoot through those different situations. I'm super conscious of time. We're having so many awesome questions and conversations. Scaling and adapting in the wine industry with technology. Now, obviously, we're here talking about direct to consumer, right? So the number one technology is obviously going to be going online and spinning up an e-commerce website, which it sounds like a lot of us have here on the call today. Mal, I'm just going to quickly ask you, what are some of the key challenges that brands may face, wine brands in particular, and how can you overcome these with technology-driven strategies? And what would that be?
Yeah, so some of the biggest challenges are looking at like what do you actually need in your tech stack, first of all, purely from a technology point of view. And the key ones to me are like looking at what are you doing for, first of all, your e-commerce platform, and everything really needs to center around whatever that platform is, which in this case, we're talking about Shopify. So Shopify really needs to sit at the hub of it. And then thinking about what are those things you can then add on to Shopify, which integrates with Shopify to enhance the experience. The first thing you probably want to look at is something around communications. What are you actually doing to be able to communicate with your customers? So a tool like Klaviyo is fantastic for that. Integrates seamlessly with Shopify, but also allows you to be your quasi CRM as well, because you can store all your customer data on there. You can segment them out into different lists, and then you can then use Klaviyo to then push those lists into other platforms, such as your advertising platforms. So whether you're using Facebook, Meta or Google or things like that, you can use Klaviyo to then push audiences into those. You can also use Shopify for that as well. The wine clubs, we talked about wine clubs before. I'd also be looking at fulfillment too. What are you using for your shipping? So there's great apps like ShipStation, which can help you with shipping, Starship it, etc. But then also, like I mentioned before, that post-purchase fulfillment communications as well. What are you doing to keep your customers informed after they purchase? Now, you can do some of that directly through Klaviyo, but there's other great apps like Aftership, Wonderment, which will allow you to also do that, which will tell customers, keep them posted with what's happening after they purchase. Then on the customer service side, Gorgeous is a fantastic tool. Again, integrates all these apps that you would hear integrate seamlessly with Shopify. Some of them only work with Shopify and that's it. Gorgeous is an amazing customer service tool that offers live chat, offers a knowledge base, also offers just like email and phone. You can integrate all of that through Gorgeous. But again, because it's integrated with Shopify, you maintain that single view of the customer. And that's kind of the benefit of making sure everything is integrated in this way, in that it can plug in really, really seamlessly with each other. And you've got that single view of the customer. Ash, you mentioned ERP before. ERPs are a big part of the wine industry. So again, there's multiple. If you have an ERP, whether you're talking about something like Deer or an inventory management system like Sin7 or NetSuite, like you talked about before, all of them integrate natively with Shopify. So making sure you've kind of got that part covered as well. So I'll probably look at those as being like the key apps which anyone would need to make sure you've got covered off to start off with. And then on top of that, you would then want to then look at what sort of specific functionality do you need on your website, to be able to do. Do you need to be able to lock certain parts off to logged in members? Do you want to be able to show different pricing to people based on their tiers? That will then go into inform the types of apps you use. Do you want to restrict access to certain pages to certain certain customers? That's when an app like a locksmith or something like that comes into it. There's seriously, if you can think it, you can probably do it on Shopify, but it's first being sure about what it is you're trying to do, and then doing that research to understand what's the app which is going to best suit that need as well. Because there's a lot of apps out there. So understand, but going into it first of all with what your requirements are is really important.
And I will just answer one of the questions that has come up with regards to ERP. So, and Mal, you probably best to answer this. So switching from WooCommerce to Shopify, having problems with linking NetSuite without being quoted huge fees in excess of, 15, 20 grand. Is this common, and do you need recommendation? Do you have any recommendations? I know that's a long and short answer. But I guess
I can't give that is one I can't give you a quick or cheap answer to, unfortunately. In a nutshell, yes, integrating NetSuite is very expensive. There are connectors. There are definitely connectors out there which will do that. But again, there's a subscription fee on top of that to be able to get that connector working. Then there's making sure you're configuring the data in the right way as well.
And I guess also a question that we often ask, and Julie, you probably see this bit, is like, do you need NetSuite? What's the reason for NetSuite? Is there other IMSs, ERPs, like, again, just taking a step back and going, what is it that we actually need this for? And can a smaller provider do the work, or can Shopify do it with the inbuilt kind of functions out of the box? Potentially, I don't know. But again, it's maybe something to kind of level set. Artificial intelligence, changing the world. It's a buzzword at the moment. 44% of Australian retailers plan to invest in AI and automation in the next 12 months. It's a pretty big stat. And obviously AI means a bunch of different things. Julia, I'm going to throw this one to you. What is Shopify doing in this space? And how can wine brands leverage these tools to enhance customer experiences, streamline operations, improve marketing efforts? I think I use AI every single day. Like chat GPT is my best friend. How can the wine industry leverage this as well?
You should already be leveraging it. No, there's so many possibilities with AI. What I really love is that Shopify has really dived in to it. I think the benefit of being still having our founder at the helm is he's super passionate about it, and we have already been able to bring it to market and very quickly bring it to market. And I mentioned a few things before, but little things like product descriptions now has a little magic button there. You put in a few dot points, you bang the button, and it will give you some options. What I love, there's two things I absolutely love about this, which I think goes beyond you just going into ChatGPT and doing it yourself. The first thing is that we have already set it up with all of kind of the commerce context of, hey, this description is to sell a product, make sure that this is giving those types of descriptions. And you can also set the tone. So how do you want it to sound? Do you want it to be, jokey, fun, serious, confident? You have the ability to set that tone to match your brand. And this is just the beginning. Like if you think ChatGPT stormed onto our computers not that long ago, and we've already made this live to people. The other things we've got is in like email marketing. Now it's got like helps you with like your subject lines, your content. It helps with kind of what type of sends you should be doing with SEO. And it is just like developing and growing every day. I think like almost once a week I see our AI team is called Shopify Magic, which I love. The Shopify Magic team is like, hey, we've just released this. And it's even helping us like internally with our jobs, so we can do more helping you guys with more specific stuff instead of looking for answers. So yeah, it's growing more and more. I think that there's always going to be the flip of what role does it play. And I think that the way we're doing it is such an awesome way for you guys to do what I was saying at the beginning, like focus on your brand and what you create and your art, and let us help you leverage that to get it to the people.
Love that. I tell you what, I even tend to go into ChatGPT and ask I ask questions about work, about Shopify, and what features should I be using, and how can I do this? It's honestly unbelievable, the AI world.
Yeah. I forgot one thing about AI that I should mention as well. I was talking about the Shop app. The Shop app chat is powered by AI, and it is so cool. It's not just give me a product. You can be like, I'm holding a 7-year-old cowboy birthday party, and it will show you all the things you need for a birthday party that are cowboy themed. It'll be like, what's their favorite color? And then it will filter it by blue. And it's just so cool. And like, that experience part is like super awesome. I can't wait to get that out to more people.
I guess I use that a little bit, except for a lot of my recommendations end up being they don't ship to Australia. So like, why am I saying? Which is probably a good thing, because I spend too much on e-commerce anyway.
Love that. So I'm going to jump into our last little bucket, and I've just realized there's a few questions coming through on the chat. I just want to level set for everyone that I'm going to take all these questions and we can send a follow-up email just so to ensure that everything's answered, and there's just a couple in there, so I just want to make sure. And feel free as well, like come back to Mal and myself, come back to Julia. We're more than happy to work and answer any questions that you might have off the back of this. But look, the last little pillar is very, we've been speaking about it the whole way through, basically building that wine community and how important that is to still do that online. I think what we'll do is we'll just kind of maybe answer one of these questions. And that is, I guess, Julia, we know Alpha Box and Dice, we've reflected on them a little bit, and they've built what I think is a pretty incredible wine community using Shopify's platform. Their wine club attributes to 40% of their overall business. So that, again, just kind of links back to that set of really invest in that community, and it will come back in spades afterwards. Have you seen any other successful brands that have really built an effective community using Shopify's platform, and what strategies did they employ?
I think it's all about being authentic, right? Like you could have a look at like Winona Wines, which Ash and I, that's our local wine shop. They do a beautiful job, and they're just like a little community wine store, and they utilize Shopify in a really beautiful way. And then there's people like Culture Kings that create these awesome community events and very culturally relevant for their audience. And it's just about taking the customer on the journey of who you are and providing unique experiences for them to enjoy. And it's all industries, it's not the wine industry. So I want to kind of like zoom out. I actually watched this video the other day, and it was Steve Jobs presenting in 1997 about their change of marketing tactic. And it was all about how they didn't want to talk about megabits and speed anymore, and they wanted to talk about emotion, because Steve Jobs was seeing all the biggest brands in the world were talking about emotion and how that brand would really make them feel. If I was going to give anybody any advice on how to do things, like say how Alpha and Box are achieving this, is like you go onto their site and I'm like, oh, I want to buy Alpha and Box. What do they sell? July luggage. I want a July luggage suitcase. I don't need a suitcase, but I want one because they're like hitting me in the feels about it. So go back to basics, find your customer, know who your customer is through connecting all of your technologies, remove the friction, offer simple subscription models, I think is really important. Don't overcomplicate it. You would be surprised how simplicity can win. And then reward loyalty, keep them engaged authentically. And it's just all about being connected.
I love that. Now, last one for you quickly. From what you're seeing in industry, could you share some examples of community building initiatives outside of wine clubs? Let's move away from that for the moment.
Yeah, events. So actually pushing more into like face to face. Like, yes, I work in e-commerce, but also I see the value in omnichannel as well. So the wineries are doing it really well, and I see have continued to growing quite rapidly, which has then that flow on effect of growing their D2C, who are trying to take that online into the physical world as well. By organizing wine tastings, dinners, things like that, finding out where are those hub of customers, who are really passionate about their brand, and doing something for them. So extending their experience there. So particularly if, let's say you're in South Australia, you've got a hub of customers in Sydney, great, reach out to them, do an event there, give them something special so that they're part of something. Like, a lot of why you're in a community is that sense of belonging. So how do you create that sense of belonging, and that sense of FOMO as well for people who couldn't be there, who aren't there? They want to be part of it. So, okay, what can they do to engage? So making sure you're thinking about what are those ways to interact with people, not just online, but offline as well. Because I think you can make some really deep and meaningful connections there, where sometimes, yes, there's a lot which is happening online. That connection can be missed if there's a lot of noise. But if you can get someone physically in a room, I know a friend of mine is the cellar door manager at Pike & Joyce. He's doing a series now of actually getting literally into like your home to like do a wine tasting for his top customers. So Danny, that's a little plug for you, but actually getting them into their home for his top customers to actually bring their friends so they're part of something there. So really think about what you can do to build that community offline as well.
I love that. Well, thank you. We have, it's got questions there, but we have hit 2:00. So hopefully that content's been really, really helpful for everyone. I will note I've seen a couple of comments come through in the chat and questions come through that are getting quite technical with specifics to your brand and your business. So just know that we'll take those questions. Feel free, again, we'll share our details, we'll share the slides. You're more than welcome to reach us and out and ask us those questions. And I'll also, like Beth, I've seen your comments around couple of wineries that don't have wine clubs, or that are doing it themselves, or Emily, your question around e-commerce stores that are doing a really good job but don't have cellar doors. Just know that we'll come back to you online, and I'll get those questions answered for everyone to see.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ash, Julia and Mal, for your tips and insights into this whole big world of online shopping. And it doesn't sound like there's the magic button that you can just press and everything comes through, but lots of really, really fantastic tips. And Mal, don't be surprised if you start getting lots of invitations to Australian wine clubs, because as Beth put, I think everyone wants you on their list. And we will also, I believe, Ash, share your presentation slides with everyone that's registered today. So look out for them in your inbox in the coming days. Our next WCA webinar will be held on Tuesday, the 8th of August. Again, keep an eye on the WCA website and your inbox for further details coming to you very soon. For WCA members, all recordings from past webinars are saved on our website in the members only section under education. So feel free to browse through those at any time. And lastly, if you have any suggestions on webinar topics you'd like us to cover through the WCA webinar program, please email me at wca@winecommunicators.com.au. Thanks again for your time joining us today. Thanks to the Shopify and Ecomm Nation team. It's been awesome having you. Have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.